Hello, and welcome to Wednesday in Westeros. I am Todd A, and with me
Taylor
is
Travis.
that guy. And also with us is Emily
Kelly.
Yay!
Yay!
So we are here in the second week of season 7 of Game of Thrones, joined by our poor man's Joanna Robinson. We're so happy you're here, Emily.
I swear to God, it was like my senpai noticed me moment when she commented back of that, like, oh no, the rich man's Emily Kelly or whatever. She was like, I agree. And I'm like, no, you don't. Shut up. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm always happy about that.
I know. I was like, oh my God, hey girl, hey.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, Joanna Robinson is the rich man's Emily Kelly. So let's just we're jumping into oh my God, I almost called it season 2. We're at episode 2, which is called Stormborn. So for the second episode, it is named after a thing related to Targaryens. But we're not going to start on Dragonstone. We're going to jump right out in the middle of Blackwater Bay and talk about Euron Greyjoy bringing hell to his niece and nephew. So we just thought we'd get this out of the way, right, Taylor? It was a big one to talk about.
It was a big one, and it's like, it was obviously the most sort of dramatic moment of the episode, and we figured we'd just get it over with right out of the bat. A lot of people are curious what we think about it. I guess before we can even jump in, though, we got to sort of give some points to Tyrion and the council and just Tyrion's plan that sort of set all this in motion. And if you recall, there was that scene in the council chamber at Dragonstone where, and it's interesting because in my book, this is like the third or fourth time Tyrion has given poor advice and and we've seen the result of that. Yeah. And if you go back to previous episodes of this show, I made a stink about when they were in Meereen. A lot of the stuff Tyrion was telling Daenerys to do failed miserably and nobody seemed to mind. And he still kept his job. And here's one more case where he says, hey, the ideal thing to do is just to attack King's Landing, but we're not going to do that. We're going to send the Dornish and the Highgarden folks to King's Landing. Meanwhile, the Unsullied and the Dragon, I don't know if you mentioned the dragons, but the Unsullied are going to go and the Dothraki are going to go take Casterly Rock, which, if you think about that scene, he got a lot of shade sort of thrown on him. Like there was a lot of looks kind of his way. Like, why is this your plan? Like, what are we trying to achieve? So it's kind of created a bad taste in my mouth. And then we saw that play out at the end when the Dornish fleet and then Yara's fleet, Yara and Theon's portion of that, and all the soldiers Euron just rolls right in. And let me start by asking you both this question. Was there a mole? Was there a traitor aboard that brought this all to fruition?
No. We'll take this opportunity to correct a horrible map reading I did at the end of our last episode. I quickly Googled something to find the location of Dragonstone. I got this awful information. Dragonstone is right at the tip of the Bay of Blackwater. It's an island. And so King's Landing is right sort of in the other end of that, opposite end. So if they were sailing straight across the Bay of Blackwater, they absolutely would have run into Euron. But it does beg the question that we asked last week, which is, how did Euron and this whole fleet sneak around them to get to King's Landing to meet Cersei in the first place? So anyway, Emily, what are your thoughts? Is there a traitor? Was there a mole? What happened here?
I mean, I didn't even think about that. I just thought he was it's like a large group of them, it's a lot of ships. You can't really even under the cover of darkness, you can't really hide the fact that there's, 500 or whatever it was ships sailing down to Dorne or sailing to King's Landing. Someone would have spotted them eventually. And yeah, that probably Euron also has apparently 1,000 ships, because that's why he showed up to King's Landing of hey, here's my 1,000 ships, they're yours. So maybe one of these 1,000 ships was patrolling the Blackwater and saw them, and that's how they kind of figured everything out.
You're right, and I misstated it again. They weren't sailing like Theon and Yara weren't sailing through Blackwater. They were sailing around to Dorne.
Yeah.
So Euron would have had to exit out of the Blackwater Bay. Yeah, it's a little unbelievable that this gigantic fleet was not seen. Like, why weren't the Ironborn on Daenerys' side sort of patrolling the bay and stuff just to see what Cersei's movements were?
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a lot of strained credibility with this. Like, I'm glad something of dramatic note did happen, but it's just like you start putting the pieces together and you think either Yara's, the shipment and fleet that Yara took is just incompetent, or Euron's got some kind of crazy ghost ship or some kind of like, cloaking device.
Yeah.
Because when they showed the ship rolling in, it was just like this menacing shot of that gorgeous, looking ship that we talked about last week. It was just rolling in, and I don't think it made any noise. It just sort of appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah. His ship is called Silence. Like
it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
like part of his whole deal of like that he is so like like death, like sneaks up on you like death. Like that's his reputation. So in the books too, especially it's his reputation as a pirate is that you are dead before you realize he's there.
Oh, interesting. I wish they'd built that mythology up a little bit more in the show, because I'd be rooting for Euron if that was the case, instead of just as like a, in my mind, kind of a throwaway character. Like we talked about last week. I like he's kind of like a Klingon in that way, right? Like he's just sort of, just sort of dematerializes and appears
pretty
and strikes.
much.
And, there he is.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Well, Emily, let me put this to you. Do you think Tyrion's plan was like in itself a bad plan?
Not really. I mean, it made sense to me. Like I'm obvious, hey, in my daily life, I'm not like a military strategist or anything, but like, yeah, it did sound like a good plan. But I feel you, Taylor, like he's made some mistakes, and I don't know if it's so much like the plans are bad or it's just like the typical like best laid plans, like it could have worked, it should have worked if not for their crazy pirate uncle, like
I just watching him move the little chess pieces around on the table, like just at the moment when that happened, I had this flashback and I wrote it in my notes, like, this is just too close to when Rob did the same thing. When Rob took like a 5-minute breather from having sex with his new wife to like move pieces around on a board and explain, I think almost the same thing, that they were going to take Casterly Rock or something like that. I would have to go back to.
No, you're right. I very much remember that. That's a great point.
And just to have that, just that moment, I was like, uh-oh.
It was like your spidey sense was tingling, like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to take Casterly Rock because you'll die.
Right.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that his move to take Casterly Rock was purely strategic, or do you think it was sort of a chip on his shoulder kind of move? Because that was the look that Olenna was flashing him, like, oh, really? That's what you're going to do? Okay. All right. Whatever. Like, how did you read that?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. Like, because there's so few, like with the dad Lannister dead.
Tywin.
See, that was blanking. I was like,
I like
Tyrion,
Dad Lannister too.
Papa Lannister. With
Dad
Papa Lannister dad, that Casterly Rock is like one of those mythological sort of places in the Westerosi like mythology of like it's never been taken or something. Like it has like it's impregnable. Like they can outlast them for years. Like it's one of these like places where people just don't go there to attack. Like if you go there to attack, you've lost, because they will outlast you, they will outman you, all these things. So I think it's both. Like it's a symbolic victory for him. Like, look, I am a Lannister too, and I told you, Cersei, I'm going to take everything that you love, including our homeland. But I think too, it is a very good show of force. Like if they could take Casterly Rock, it would show the rest of Westeros like, oh shit, like these guys are serious. Like,
do you think it would be a moral defeat over Cersei and Jaime? Do you think it would actually like sort of shock them to their core that happened? Or like, what do you think their response would be if and when that occurs?
I thought it was,
I don't know.
blow to her ego.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I remember, because I'm still in my rewatch of like, Tommen was asking her like, isn't Castle Rock your home? Like, don't you miss it? And because she had said sometimes, like when he was a boy, like I liked it. I loved it there. I felt free there. It was before all this nonsense of marrying Robert. So I think for sure, yeah, it's their last true stronghold of power besides the actual iron stupid sword chair, but like Castle Rock.
Yeah. Let's talk about something positive that I liked about this battle, which was the fire and just the element of fire and like all the embers and sparks sort of floating around them, especially when Euron took out those two sand snakes. That was just a thing we have not seen in the show, even though we've seen other attacks with fire. And I don't know. I appreciated the look of it. Did
you see that one scene where like it's literally Euron fighting some dude and he kind of sidesteps just as a firebolt, like a ball comes right over his shoulder? It was like, whoa. And it was so, the camera didn't like focus on it, just sort of happened, but it was kind of a badass little moment. I don't know if he saw it or if that was just lucky on his part, but just seeing that was really cool, kind of reinforced what a cool effect that was.
Yeah,
there was some bad,
it was really cool.
There was some bad camera movement for me. Like there was a weird thing where it just kept flipping to the other character's like point of view, like as soon as the one person would swing, and I kept getting disoriented because of that. But
I think that was kind of the point. That's what I thought watching it. It was really like the Battle of the Bastards, where they tried to really give the audience this sense of what battle really feels like, of, Jon almost being suffocated by this wall of bodies and stuff, of all these ships are painted black. And so it looks like there's nothing below you or beneath, around you. And so then all this like lighting of the embers and then switching back and forth. Like I liked that they tried to make it seem chaotic, even if it sacrificed kind of some of the action. But that's I thought it was really neat because it made me very double nervous, like about everything. Of like, I can't see where he went, like I can't see where anyone is, like are they even still on the ship, where's the other ship, where are these guys coming from? So I really liked it, and the fire was a good touch too.
I buy into all that.
Yeah, thanks.
And I think and on my rewatch when I got to Hardhome, I think we talked about this, how it's really only like 20 minutes of that episode. And this was even shorter. This was like 10 minutes or less of this episode. And they knew like they couldn't drag this out. 50 minutes of that would have been too disoriented, disorienting. But if you only have 10 minutes, it's a good effect, So, killing the sand snakes, how'd you feel about that, Emily?
Man, I'm mostly bummed because we just didn't get to see them like at all.
Right.
And they don't play a huge role in the books either, but it was just kind of one of those things. Like, I feel like we only saw them like for like 3 maybe total episodes, and not even that much, and only 3 of them instead of the full 7 or 8 or whatever it is in the books.
There were more in the books?
Yeah, there's more. A lot of them are like little, like they're like younger girls, like only like 5 or something. But yeah, these were the 3 older. So there might have been 1 more, and I can't remember what her weapon was. That's how I associate with them, what their weapons are. But I'm just kind of bummed because it was like they're so cool, like that they're these cool, swarthy kind of warrior ladies with all these cool weapons, and I don't know. I'm kind of bummed. And I feel like they were really like, not nice deaths either, of like, he killed them with their own weapons, and like, it's not good.
One of them is still alive, so they're not all
gone.
That's
true. But I don't think that I think she probably would have preferred death to perhaps what's happening to her with the Ironborn.
Yeah.
So not good.
Yeah, and there was something so creepy to me about starting this scene with the 2 scenes they did. One of like the sand snakes in their hammocks teasing each other and talking about who they were going to kill, and then the other of Yara and Elia, or Alaria, I can't remember which one. About to ship.
Yeah.
And, a double pun. And I don't know. I don't know. My heart kind of sank. Like, do we have to I don't know. Do we have to mix the
was sort
sex
of
with the violence every time Game of Thrones?
It just sort of felt like anything involving the Sand Snakes and Ilaria just kind of felt like one more, like the last sort of example of their wasted space in the show and the storyline, or how the show treats them in the storyline, and then obviously their demise. I like the fact that Ilaria and then one of the daughters are still alive, because for me that's the trophy that Euron's going to bring back to Cersei. Hey, here's the woman who poisoned your daughter, and hey, here's her daughter too. Guess what you get to do? So it's going to be very interesting to see that. However, one thing that I have not seen a lot of people talk about this morning, reading spoilers and comments, don't all the Sand Snakes have basically poison weapons? And didn't they like strike Euron numerous times? I just can't imagine he's going to be long for this world himself, Yeah,
that's true. I don't know about the whip. The tip of it might have had poison. Yeah, definitely in the books they all have like poisoned weapons. But yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really think about that.
Because they showed him like she was like shivving him several times, and just like, and and maybe this is the one time she forgot to coat it in poison or what have you. But he has a character. He hasn't built up. He hasn't earned his dramatic agency, just yet. So I would just imagine a quick and swift death is probably best.
Anyway. Yeah, we'll end that scene as it ends. But first, that the Theon Yara Euron, meaningful glances kind of thing.
That was hard to watch, honestly.
No kidding.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, because like here we've had Theon, of all the characters, that dude's been through the most in terms of an arc. So he is what he is when he's with the Starks. He, betrays the Starks. His men betray him. He goes through with Ramsay. He's broken down. Yara tries to save him. He doesn't want that. He eventually gets built back up. He eventually basically looks to Yara as his role model. She's the strong sort of person in his family. He has that moment, and what really that scene last night reminded me of is that moment with Sansa and Ramsay, where he just has to stand there and watch it. And it kind of felt like, okay, this is the moment where he's going to redeem himself, and then he freaking jumps off the ship. And it's just like my look of just awe was the same as Yara's, just completely, totally, just I couldn't even understand what was going on.
Emily, were you as shocked?
Not really. I mean, I think as soon as he hesitated, like the moment he hesitated, I was like, oh no, Theon. Yeah. But I know a lot of people are really mad at him and mad about it, but his character, I mean, right now, his base arc right now is still overcoming PTSD. Like it's not something, and the things that he experienced with Ramsay, with Sansa through whatever 3 seasons or 4 seasons. I mean, that's not just something that goes away in a little bit. I think there was one last season where Yara, after he's rescued and whatever, and they're together, and she's just like, dude, get over it. And I was mad. I was like, you don't just get over something like that happened to you. So, but I think it's just, it's sad. And someone pointed out to me today, actually, too, that him not fighting was probably the best chance to save her life.
That's true.
Yeah, that he figured if he went after Euron, he would slit her throat and take Theon instead. The fact that he bailed was maybe helping her to stay alive, because now, she could be a bargaining chip. Euron could use her as bait to try to get Theon to come back to rescue her, So, I mean, I wasn't super shocked, but it's definitely disappointing. You want him to be better and be braver, but he's just not yet. And I think that's kind of sad. I think his day will come eventually, but just today was not that day.
Yeah.
Do you think Yara will forgive him though? If he comes and rescues her, what is her reaction going to be? Is she going to be like, is she going to appreciate that? Is she going to hate the fact that he cut and ran instead of paying the iron price?
Yeah.
What is the calculus there?
Probably depends on what Euron and Cersei do to her, before he can rescue her. If she just gets to sit in a cell and he rescues her, maybe she'd be like, oh, great. But, what, you're an asshole. But if she's being tortured and all this stuff, if she rescues her after all that, probably she'd be a bit more thankful to not be tortured anymore.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So then that scene just, as gross as it was, I did appreciate that we see from Theon's point of view, like it's, there's this shot that starts like above the ship and then just kind of moves down and you see the bodies of Nim and Obara, like, impaled and hanging there, which was awful.
Yeah.
But when I saw it, the dress that Obara is in, I thought was Ilaria's. And so I just thought that was Yara hanging there, and I rewound it and was like, well, it doesn't really look like Yara, but it still looks like Ilaria's. I was just like, why would they kill them? I don't understand what's going on. It took me seeing a tweet this morning to confirm that it was not them, and then rewatching it to go like, oh, now I get it. Like it was a really vague kind of shot.
Yeah, well, I automatically recognized what it was because the oldest sister, Obaria, she was nailed to the mast with her own spear,
right? And
it starts with an N. Nim. She was hung with her own whip.
Yeah.
So I automatically knew it was the both of them. And it's kind of like, it is gross, but it's kind of like a cool sort of like poetic death of like, with your own weapons. I still don't like it, but it was okay.
Which one is Colleen Wing? I always forget.
She is
That's Nim.
That's Nim. Okay.
Whip. Yeah.
Jessica Henwick. And I did read an interview with her last night or this morning where, she was kind of over it. So I really liked
over Game of Thrones, you mean?
Yeah. Like she just kind of, she thought like, well, the Sand Snakes are going to do all this, badassery. And then they didn't really do any badassery. And then they kind of disappeared for most of a season.
Yeah.
And so she was in the middle of Iron Fist when they were shooting this, and they really wanted all three of them to come back and sort of wrap up their storyline. And apparently it was, kind of a pain in her ass. Like she was flying back and forth between Belfast and New York, shooting both at the same time.
Jesus.
She was just kind of like, hey, I got another gig. I'm good.
And I don't know if she's in the new Star Wars, but she was a pilot in episode 7. So I would imagine maybe she pops up again.
I think so.
She's cool, man. Like she's not hurting for work or anything.
No, and as bad as Iron Fist was, her character gets so much more room to grow. And
she was the best part of the whole show. So
totally. Yeah. Not to sidebar too far, but I would much prefer 13 episodes of Colleen Wing, the Colleen Wing story, where she just has like a nice little like housekeeper named Danny.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move to Dragonstone, which is actually the scene that opens it. What did you take away from this immediate confrontation between Daenerys and Varys? Like Daenerys just comes at him.
Yeah, and about time too, because it's like for season upon season now, I have been wondering how Varys is going to play this whole thing. Because he was responsible for her being sold into the Dothraki. He was responsible for a lot of shit in her life. And it was just kind of cool, like out of nowhere for her to be like, okay, so let's talk about this for once. She thanked him for bringing the Martells and the and whoever else to the table. But she's just like, dude, you're kind of a slimy guy. Like, I don't know if I should trust you. And it was more interesting that Tyrion was the one who was defending him, So it's just like, it was an odd sort of encounter that I'm glad happened. A lot of it just felt like stuff that was being telegraphed. Like, he's probably going to die at the end of the season via dragon fire. Something's going to happen to that guy. There's no way, just like Littlefinger, there's no way he's going to continue on, I think, into next season.
I mean, he's a merman. He's a
merling.
If he was a merling, he would have jumped in that water and helped save those people from Euron. We did not see. And you know what's really funny about that? When that attack was going on, I remember distinctly thinking, okay, if that dude's a merman or a merling, now is the time. Now is the time to see Varys like pop out of the water and swing some sword or something. Nope, didn't happen. I was like,
wouldn't that have been great if the ships are sailing off and Theon's floating there alone, looking at the hanging bodies, and then Varys surfaces.
I mean, I've been looking for a reason for Varys and Theon to hang out because, Varys has had a similar background and removal of certain appendages. So it would have been nice to have them somehow get together. But at this juncture, I don't see Varys spending much more time with the folks.
Well, Emily,
Yeah.
what did you think about that confrontation? Was Daenerys being too harsh on him?
No, I mean, I think she was absolutely right in like questioning him. And I think it was a really cool scene for a lot of reasons, but especially like even in, previous seasons when he is talking to the king and Cersei and all these people, they treat him with this air of like that they're still sort of afraid of him. Like that they know that he knows things about them and could use those things about them. And so they kind of treat him like with this like not respect so much, but this like wariness. And so I think the fact that she was so in his face about everything was cool to see, like that she's not afraid of him, and she's not afraid of what he could say about her or sell about her. She doesn't give a shit. And I think too, I can't catalog every scene I've ever seen him in, but this was definitely the first scene where I really saw him mad, like that he lost his temper. So many times he's so calm and cool and calculating, and this was the first time he ever really like raised his voice, and that was like obviously emotional about what he was saying. And that was, to me, meant that was one of the very first times he was straight with anyone, like that he was telling the absolute truth to his core.
But do you buy that he's doing all this for the people? Because that seemed to ring a little hollow to me.
No, I think so.
I think he is. And I think it's he's one of those characters like someone has to, he's like the person maybe that you would least expect to be that genuine. And I think it was just exactly as he said, is he's seen the literal very worst of people. Yeah. And he knows what it's like to be poverty stricken and sold into slavery and mutilated and beaten and abused, and he doesn't want to have anyone else feel like that and happen to them. And I think that's really common of people who come from backgrounds like that. You want to fight so that nobody else has to go through what you went through. So I think he's absolutely genuine.
I agree with that, and I think it just speaks to how great Conleth Hill is as an actor, because his delivery for 7 years has made us think that he is as slimy as the people he's serving. But I think over the years, we've absolutely heard him say, I'm doing all of this for the realm. And this was him doing it all along. He had to get Daenerys out of Westeros because she was going to be killed by Robert Baratheon. So yeah, he sold her to the Dothraki, but he had to make that deal. I really didn't appreciate that he just sort of blew that off of like, well, but you survived it and, learned all this stuff. Like that wasn't the point, Daenerys. Like he saved your ass, Yeah.
He
did it in a way that guaranteed your brother would die, because that stupid cocky asshole was never going to survive the Dothraki horde,
She name checked him like 2 or 3 times this episode too. It was funny. She's like, my brother did this and he was an idiot and blah, blah, blah. I will echo Emily's kind of comment on him losing his temper. That was the first time I saw like Conleth Hill, the actor, like seeping through, like, cause usually he plays very lyrically, very smooth. And this is the time I saw like some good, honest Irish anger, like coming out. That dude. I was just like, whoa, this is a new gear for that guy.
That's what it was. I'm like, I recognize it. I'm like, oh yeah. That's what I sound like when I'm mad too. Okay. I got it.
That's what he's like in all of fly fishing in the Yemen. He's just on fire. He's so angry at Ewan McGregor.
I love it.
No, I'm kidding. He's like a big doof in that. So Melisandre shows up, confusing me even more of why. It confused me for a moment when I thought, well, why her and not the other Red Priestess that visited her in Marine? But then they kind of justify it by saying like, oh, I met the Red Priestesses in Marine and they did good jobs there. So we get I don't know, it wasn't really a huge info dump. It wasn't like a Sam sized info dump, but I just thought that whole conversation was so like economical and revealed so much very quickly. Like the first time we heard the words,
it was the first time we heard the words Prince that was promised. Like that has never been mentioned on the show, has it? I mean, they've said Azor Ahai kind of in passing, but I don't think she's ever articulated those words.
I believe
Not-
Melisandre has said those words before.
Has she? Okay.
Yeah, I think she has. I think, but it was like in the context of like Azor Ahai is like my deal, but you may know it as the Prince of.
Oh,
or
okay.
whatever. Yeah, because they're all the same, basically.
Well, I believe Taylor. I think you were the one who pointed out in the notes that Meister Aemon had.
Oh no, that was me.
Oh, you added that. Thank you, Emily. About Meister Aemon's pointing out the thing about the Prince noun, and I just thought it was so cool that they did it in Valyrian. That was, I guess, that's what I mean by the economical use of this. Like we kind of learn that Daenerys's Valyrian is not as polished as Missandei's, which is very cool. And
yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, and then Missandei gets to correct her and say, actually, that noun has no gender. And I don't know, it was a very cool scene to me.
Yeah, I loved it. I just love that they wanted to reiterate once again, like Missandei is so smart and like a value to her. Just a value to us all, really, of like that she's pointed this out. And even Melisandre, the look on her face was like, oh, I never really thought about it like that. Like I never understood.
She did seem slightly humbled when she was like, prophecies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
And exactly. I love that too. She called herself on her own bullshit. She's like, look, I don't really like put a lot of stock in prophecies nowadays. Okay. Like I messed up like a lot. I burned a child. Okay. Like I don't want to talk about it.
Right. Yeah. So then, we know we're going to get Melisandre and Davos back at Dragonstone because Davos is traveling with Jon there next week. So presumably we're going to see this face-off between the two of them. Melisandre. Well,
no, remember, isn't Davos, didn't he come around to Melisandre? Like where did we leave them last season? Did he find out she killed Marine and then?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right.
And he said Jon kicked her out of Winterfell.
That's right. Yeah.
And allowed that if Davos saw her again, he would kill her.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Davos needs some like happiness in his life. Like he needs some.
I don't know if you saw someone said something like that to Joe Robinson, and her reply was just a reminder that he has a wife that he has never talked about.
Oh yeah, I always think about that in the books, because in the books, like all the chapters from his perspective, he always like every couple of paragraphs he talks about like, oh, I should just go back to my home and my wife and like not do this anymore. But like on the show, we have not seen or heard of her ever.
Yeah,
I just sort of assumed she had passed away or something because like his son
just like hangs out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's a busy guy. I don't know.
So someone asked the question, I'm sorry that I'm going off our notes doc about, are all the Dothraki gone from Essos? Which if you did not ask that question, I want to put it to you because what's your take on that? Do you have any information or do you?
Oh,
on that?
No. When I saw this in the notes, I was kind of curious. I was thinking about it myself. I mean, there's from last season when they all go to the Mother Mountain or whatever, and Daenerys was like still kidnapped. So this whole thing, one of my favorite all-time scenes ever of Game of Thrones is where she burns those asshole dudes alive and then walks out of the flames, and then and everyone's just like, okay, cool, we'll be yours, or we'll join your Khalasar now. And I mean, certain, but unless there were tribes or Khalasars that didn't show up that day or like bailed or like couldn't fit on the ships, I would think that yes, they have all left. But I have so many logistical questions now because one, Dragonstone is not that big. And so like, where are they being housed? How are they being fed? Like all these things. So I don't know if they are all gone with her but I think a vast horde of them traveled across the sea with her. And
Yeah.
maybe some of them stayed like in Meereen and Yunkai and to try to keep the peace there, kind of keep a thing. I don't know if Dothraki can really keep the peace, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them, if not all of them, just kind of bailed and got on these ships with her and are going to invade Westeros.
Yeah, and then as far as the plan for after they take Westeros, I mean, they are not a wintry sort of people. I mean, they barely wear more than pants.
Yeah.
And it is going to chill.
Yeah, maybe they'll all just live in Dorne. Dorne's lovely. Like, they'll all just hang out there. Yeah.
I do think that was part of Tyrion's plan for taking Casterly Rock with the Dothraki was send the most brutish among your army to what Cersei thinks of as like this civilized,
oh sure,
highborn place, and really make a mess of it.
I do like. I was going to say too. I like going back to Tyrion's plan real quick. I appreciate the fact that he gets you can't rule if everything's just burning in ashes. Like you've got to be a plan post takeover. Like what is it? And I forget who it was. Was it may have been Tyrion or may have been Olenna, but somebody mentioned Robert at one point. Like, even when Robert took over, things kind of settled down, for a while after that. He had a way of kind of binding everybody together, letting the country move on, if you will. So I don't know. It's interesting. And it's interesting also that, now that Yara and Alaria are gone, that leaves only Olenna left essentially as a primary, as we were talking about, which kingdoms which kingdoms Cersei has, which kingdoms Daenerys has. We're kind of evened out. Like the 7 kingdoms are down to 5 now, and 2 are with Cersei and 2 are with Daenerys.
Well, let me ask another logistical question. Do we know that the Dornish army was with Daenerys? Because I think they're still in Dorne.
Yeah, I think they were going to get them to take
that's what I
them
thought.
to King's Landing.
Okay. So I took that as like they were already on the boats, and then when they took over the boats and burned the boats, that there went the Dornish army as well.
No, it was just that.
No, it was just Greyjoys.
Yeah, because Tyrion said, like, you will go with the Martells. I guess they're not really Martells, but go down with the Dornish to get the army, like put the army on your boats, Yara, and then sail back up to King's Landing.
Okay.
Like she was their military escort, essentially, taking the Sand Snakes and their mom back down to Dorne to pick up the army and then invading. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I did, at the beginning of the episode, because I was the one who left this note, like there's this one cool shot of like all the women around the table. And I was like, man, this is so cool.
Oh, I know. I think I tweeted about it because I was just like, and then it sucks, obviously. Like the end of the episode, we were like, exactly. 2 of them are captured, like 2 of them are dead. And, it's like sort of a bummer. But yeah, in that moment, it was so cool to see, all these powerful women standing around the table together, plotting the takeover of a kingdom, 7 kingdoms. So cool.
Yeah, and then that you said exactly what I was going to lead us to, which is that some of the wind gets sucked out of that by the end of the episode. But we do have that great scene between Daenerys and Olenna, which was just just more of the like truth-telling Olenna that we love. Just some no bullshit.
Everyone's grandma.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. My grandma didn't drop cold truths like that. It was just that line, obviously, that blew me away was that you're a dragon, be a dragon. That was a killer, and it was great to see her say, there's not going to be like peace doesn't last. That's a myth. Stop thinking that.
It was great though that Daenerys like kind of, instantly sort of took to her wisdom, like, oh, you're fun. I'm going to keep you around. Like this is, I want you to hang back, Olenna. I want to talk to you a little bit. Like this just furthers my deep, deep desire to see Olenna live long enough to have a confrontation with Lady Mormont. Like that's all I want in this world. I don't care at this juncture. I don't care about anything else that happens. I won't be disappointed at all. All I want from the show is one scene where Olenna Tyrell and Lady Mormont have some kind of verbal back and forth. That's all I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel you. I love it.
I'm rooting for her, for Olenna to make
Yeah.
it to next season, you know?
Yeah.
Like I want some badass stuff in the works for her.
Me too. And I think Dany she's had so like basically no female influences in her life. Like her mom died.
True. Yeah.
She had to grow up with the brother and like whatever merchant dudes in Essos or wherever they were growing up before. Like she never really got to have any female influences in her life. And I think too, that's why she was so taken with her Dothraki handmaidens of like, oh my God, this is the first time I get to be around like other women. And that she was sort of tricked by the witch lady originally, that she wanted to believe her. Like she wanted to believe this older, seemingly kindly woman was going to take care of her. But Olenna is like one of my favorite characters. She's just so cool. And yeah, I feel like her and Lyanna Stark should have a staring contest first and then have a war of words.
How, Emily, I'll throw this one to you. How did the Grey Worm Missandei scene sit with you?
I really liked it.
Okay.
So for me, there's so few sex scenes in Game of Thrones that are entirely consensual.
True.
And that even the consensual sex scenes, for the most part, are still mostly about male pleasure. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I'm like blushing like behind my mic, so that the fact that this scene was, just logistically pretty much all about female pleasure was very refreshing to see. But that also, I felt that it was very intimate in that she wasn't afraid to see him, like see all of him. Like it's probably not a pretty sight. Like I didn't want to Google it. So
were you in the same boat though? Like when that happened, I was literally saying to the TV, please don't show it. Please don't show it. Please don't show it. Cause like it was panning down. I'm like, oh God, don't show it. Don't. And then they didn't. Thank God.
And then Peter's like whispering like, show it. I'm like, why?
No, I don't need to.
I was like, that's something you probably can't unsee. Not that it's like dirty or wrong or anything, but it was just like, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of taking it. I'm kind of glad they didn't. But yeah, I just feel like it was so, it was probably one of the most just like emotionally gratifying scenes for me, because obviously he's been in love with her all this time and she has had feelings for him. And that finally they came together in this very incredibly soft and intimate scene together was really lovely. And I hope that neither of them die, because I kind of hope, that they find their way back to each other. But,
it reminded me though a lot of the Robb Stark, what's her face? His wife,
Talisa.
It reminded me a lot of that the first time they sort of did it. It's same lighting, same sort of pacing. Just sort of that moment of, it was a pure little moment between the two of them. And Emily's so right. Like there's very few consensual sex scenes in the show. That was, I think that would have been the only other one.
I think it was John Ygritte scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
Also focused on female pleasure.
Yes.
No, I appreciate your perspective on that. That's good to hear, because I did feel like in that just initial moment where she so quickly drops her robe, I was like, oh no, it's sort of old school Game of Thrones where it's we're just going to get female nudity for the sake of it. But then then it sort of takes a turn.
Before too, like this isn't the first time we see her naked, or he sees her naked.
Well, before, but isn't it when she's bathing and it's sort of I mean, it's an intimate moment again, but it's also sort of a private moment that he wasn't necessarily meant to see her. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'll roll on from talking about sex scenes, and we'll go to we'll cool off in the north at Winterfell, where first we get I can't even remember the order of all of these scenes because it was just a bunch of great like 2-person dialogues, and then this big scene where Jon is in front of the whole group. But we do get to see Sansa, or Jon even asks Sansa for her judgment of Tyrion, which I thought was great. I don't know. Is Sansa? I I have my own answer to this. Is she becoming more of the the trusted advisor of Jon. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting that he would ask her that, because I feel like at this juncture, he's almost spent more time with Tyrion than she has. Like, if you take all their time together at the wall, other little backs and forth, it seems like when Sansa was quote unquote married to him, that just consisted of, hey, it'll be okay, don't worry, like I won't touch you, like that. There just wasn't that much there. Maybe they just didn't show us, in the context of the show. It was interesting that he was like, hey, I'm not. You know more than I do. I'm like, no, you know more than she does.
Yeah, I would think Sansa.
Well, there was where they were married. Very early, like season 1. Or season 1 or 2, I don't remember. When Joffrey, it's like this whole thing where Meryn Trant beats Sansa like in front of everyone and like rips her blouse and stuff. Yeah. It's Tyrion, I think, who steps in.
It is.
It slaps Joffrey. And is like, how dare you treat your betrothed like this? Like that he really steps up to shield Sansa from him. And I think he like visits Sansa a few times, like to make sure she's okay, and like tries to shield her from Cersei and stuff. So I get why Jon would ask her that she would know him a little bit better. But that Jon had conversations with Tyrion on the road and at the wall, but Sansa has been around him for all these seasons. Like even before they were married, that she got to see what kind of man he really was, of standing up to Cersei and saying all these things to Joffrey. And, so I'm glad that Jon trusted her opinion of him.
I'll tell you just to call back to the Tyrion, Melisandre Daenerys scene where Tyrion says when Melisandre mentions Jon Snow, Tyrion says, I like Jon Snow. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why it cheered me so much to hear someone on Game of Thrones say they like another person.
Yeah, it's cute.
Like I never hear that. But it's true. Like, I think that's an interesting little triangle there of like, I think Sansa now likes Tyrion, or at least like respects him, and considering where she started, that's a huge thing. And Jon likes Tyrion and Tyrion likes Jon. It's a nice little, Targaryen Stark relationship there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry, Taylor, were you about to say something?
Oh, no. I was, but I'll wait. But, let's just take it the full way through. At this juncture on the show, because that, he gets the letter. It's funny too. I like the fact that time is finally being compressed. In seasons past, if a raven was to be sent, we'd wait 2 or 3 episodes and then we'd see like, oh, the ravens come. Now it's like Daenerys is like, yeah, send a raven. And like the very next scene, hey, a raven's come for you, Jon. Oh, great. Like, it's just, we're kind of, we're sort of suspending the disbelief a little bit, but he's reading that off to those folks. And then it's another sort of example of the Stark children kind of council. It's not that Jon is king so much as sort of like, head of this little council of he and Sansa, and then hopefully soon Arya, and maybe even Bran, not Bran. Bran at some point, are going to show up. But like he's, they're still doing, she's still questioning him in the open council. There's back and forth. You're actually, if you were a Westerosi lord, I'm curious what you would think of that. Is that something that inspires confidence? You're like, oh yeah, the kid, those kids are Ned's son, children, they know best. Is it weird that she's questioning him openly again? It's interesting to consider. And then she's the only one that has any kind of wisdom in the show. We know, when she tells Jon, she's like, hey, the last time a Targaryen asked a Stark to come meet up, that he was burned alive. That was our grandpa. Like, don't do this. And she doesn't know what we know about Daenerys. So in terms of the show's, ingrained knowledge, she's actually the smartest one right now. Like I don't know if I would disagree with her based on just what we know. So it's interesting that Jon rolled the dice a little bit.
I actually thought you were going to say she doesn't know what we know, which is that he's a Targaryen, which is like the ultimate irony there.
True. Yeah. I know. There's like one line where Royce yells like, "You can't trust your Targaryen." I giggled my ass off. I'm like, okay. Like, good. Every time too, I think I tweeted, I was like, does everyone else giggle like when he says like my dad and like my sisters, like my brothers? I'm like, if only you knew, Jon Snow.
How do you think that? But on that note, how do you think that information is going to be revealed to him? Because it's got to come soon.
Great question. I think Littlefinger has the information.
Why do you say that?
He's just the most likely to have put it together. And that plot that he stitched together, the murder of John Aaron, is super effing intricate. And the way that he left all the clues for Ned to find, with like the history of the kings of Westeros and their children and things like that. I just think he's done the research in that lineage, and he knows.
Why do you think he's keeping it close to the vest right now? Like, he had a moment to basically install Sansa early on, and he's kind of let this linger.
Another good question. I think he's focused on Sansa and like securing the North for himself, and he'll play that card when he needs to really alienate Jon and freeze him out.
Yeah, and I think he was like, I think he waited all this time too, and kind of like entrapped Ned in that original way, like, because he was so in love with Catelyn that finding out and, you know, figuring it out, like, look, Ned didn't cheat on you. Like that little grain of knowledge kept Catelyn and Ned from ever really, you know, Catelyn from ever really forgiving Ned, right? So if Littlefinger was going to reveal that, he would lose that leverage against her, you know, like that someday maybe she would come to her senses and come back to him, you know, like, so it makes sense to me, like, that maybe he would know, maybe Varys would know, maybe that Melisandre is now here with both of them together. Maybe she sees it in the flames. Maybe the dragons smell it on him. Like, I'm really like this at this point. I am so excited to see how they figure it out, and kind of what that means for the both of them, because I think that's kind of the last sort of like real big deal of stuff.
Well, and this is a great point to discuss, because it seems like at this point Sansa has to hear it from Littlefinger.
Yeah.
And so that means she's probably gonna have to hear it before Jon even discovers it himself, because they've got to like drive that wedge there. And I don't know. I'm also judging from that a second trailer we saw before the season, where we see him fighting with the Brotherhood Without Banners, that, you know, he does get locked out. Maybe he's, you know, by the time that happens in the season, he's already been ejected as the King of the North. So
maybe.
I mean, I'm still hoping that the two of them get together and be the King and Queen of the North.
Shut up, Todd.
Yeah, you're alone in that one, dude.
I mean, what did you feel when Jon finally turns to her in that meeting of the Northmen and says, "You're in charge, Sansa"? I mean, was that
yes, finally? Okay. Fuck.
Yeah.
He also says a line too, and I don't remember the exact words, because probably the exact words matter more, but he says, like, "You're the only Stark left in Winterfell."
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, she is. Like, except and now Arya's gonna come, but Sansa is the oldest Stark, the oldest trueborn Stark kid. So I'm just really, you know, I'm just really excited for Sansa, and I don't want them to be at odds together. Like, I know a lot of, you know, even you guys like in the notes comment like, stop embarrassing yourself, Sansa, like stop arguing with him. But I think it's just like she really cares for him, but mostly she cares to keep the people around her safe. And so I think she's gonna fight the hardest to make sure that Winterfell is safe and that the North is safe. And especially now that Arya is coming back, like that her family, the rest of them, remain safe and wait out this long winter.
You know, of all the Stark kids that are left or that have lived at all, she's the only one that truly seems to embody both Ned and Catelyn. Like, it's weird. It's Sophie Turner has kind of done this thing this season where her acting, like she's so poised and so confident and so not the little girl that she portrayed season after season after season. She like, I look at her and maybe it's the way, you know, they're doing her costume now, but she really has a Ned like sort of resolve, but with a Catelyn like demeanor. It really strikes me every time she's on screen. I thought it was a little funny that when he mentions that, you know, she's the queen now, she kind of had a look of surprise. I was like, really? Is that surprising that he would do that? Like, are you really that shocked? Like, it, you know, just that was a little bit odd, but otherwise I was glad that happened.
Yeah, she's like finally getting her chance. You know, it bothers me when people say like, "Oh, I hate Sansa. I don't like Sansa." It's like you're obviously entitled to your opinion. That's fine. But like she, out of most and really most of the characters, has had such a big arc of being this spoiled whiny girl who just wanted to go to King's Landing and be pretty and marry a king or a prince or whatever, to this badass woman who has endured so much and is finally getting a chance. You know, people are done underestimating her and abusing her and using her. Like, she's finally getting her opportunity to be the person that she is now, that she's grown into be.
This is jumping ahead a little bit, but do you think Arya is going to be her assassin once Arya makes it to Winterfell?
I think so. I mean, we talked about this on fan theories about Peter Baelish's dagger, which also, I don't know if you guys talked about it in the first episode, but when Sam is flipping through the book and finds Dragonstone, the dagger that he lingers on the page, that's Peter Baelish's dagger. It's a Valyrian steel dagger that he's had all these years. And the fact that Arya in some of these promo shots is just even like, now it makes even more waves of like, is he dead? But also she could fight White Walkers with that thing now. Very exciting. So I think, I don't know if it's going to be Arya. I think all signs point to yes, that Arya is going to take care of some business. But I have this weird fascination with Peter Baelish, so don't at me. I was talking to one of my friends last night on Twitter after the episode about, she was just like, does he really mean to do all these things? And like, everyone's like, yeah, he's terrible. And she's like, but does he really? Because just, you know, the thirst is sort of real of like this, he's this really cunning Irishman who, you know, I don't know. I don't want him to die because he's so cool. Sorry.
Yeah, but like I mentioned it last week too. His arc is kind of over. Like, I don't know where he goes from here. Like, he has no other. Cersei's not an ally anymore. Daenerys isn't an ally to him anymore. Yeah, or never was. Rather, he seems to put all his cards in the Sansa bucket, and I can easily see. And she knows what he wants, so it's just a matter of time before she's like, Arya, kill, and Arya just. Yeah, that's the end of it. Yeah. One other thing about Winterfell before we move on. There's still no mention of Bran. Like, I could have swore this is the week where like Jon gets his raven from the wall. Like, hey, your brother's alive. He's here. And like, just nothing. What those weird
ravens get to him instantly.
No.
And the wall is just like, fuck that guy.
What's the wall waiting for? Like, you think that the Night's Watch would be like, holy shit, like we gotta let Jon know. Like, why are they holding that back? It's such a weird thing.
Which honestly,
probably because they're dealing with a horde of White Walkers that Bran led right to their doorstep. They're all dead at this point.
That'll be the last episode. Jon leads the party back to Castle Black, and everyone's dead, including his brother. And it's like, there's just a note.
And then the Night King's just like on the top of the wall, like, come at me, bro.
Oh man, it's a weird editing choice. Like, why even have the Bran scene last week? Because last week's episode was just such a stacking of like all these scenes, giving like Taylor and I were saying, just sort of moving the chess pieces like a little bit farther on the board, and they just didn't need to move that chess piece yet. He could have shown up, in episode 4. It would have been fine.
Yeah.
We should do a speed round for these last few scenes. Yeah. So there's a scene with several scenes in King's Landing that were at least conversations we should touch on. But let's jump to that Jaime and Randall Tarley one, because every time I see Randall Tarley, I don't know who it is. Despite the last week on Game of Thrones teaser, I still didn't recognize him. But how'd you feel about?
He reminds me of Charles Widmore from Lost. I'm like, what? Why? Who is this guy?
Oh, or he's just like mean and gravelly, like for the sake of being like mean and gravelly.
Yeah. He's another character that's gotten elevated all of a sudden, or at least Jaime is trying to elevate him. But did you have any good, bad feelings about that, Emily?
I mean, he shows up a bit more in the books. Like, I think Arya runs into him like one time, and Brienne of Tarth runs into him a little bit. And obviously he's Sam's, mean dad. I think his only stake in this game is that he is the only one left of this era of Robert Baratheon who beat Robert Baratheon. Like, he beat Robert Baratheon in his own game in single combat. So I think he's just sort of this last, Selmy is dead. The mountain is a zombie. Like, you know, all these legendary warriors are gone. And I think Randall Tarley is kind of the only one left, which is pretty cool. Like in the war to come, obviously that's a really good thing to have on your side. But I think he's kind of too proud. He says it to Jamie too loyal that he won't support them. I think wherever Elena goes, he will go out of this sense of honor.
You believe that he will keep his word?
Yeah.
And he's just going to be like this hard ass bastard that's actually really loyal to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really strange when whatever the first question was that Jamie asked, he did not answer right away. I don't remember if it was the general question or the loyalty question, but not that it was weird. I mean, it was just like, I think that was a big sign of, you know, if this guy really wanted to politic his way up to general of the Lannister army, he would have done so. But he's
like one of those dudes that doesn't care.
Yeah. Sort of the bizarro Ned in that way. Of like, he's true to his word. He's just an asshole.
Yeah.
So again, one of you asked in the notes,
that was me.
You know, after Casterly Rock falls, will Tyrion convince Daenerys to let Jaime be the head of House Lannister? So I think it's interesting that you think that would be on the table.
I do, only because Tyrion has great love for his brother, no love for his sister. And I don't see Tyrion as being the Lord of Casterly. I just don't see him wanting that. If he ends up becoming the hand of the queen, he can't do that. And I just don't, are there any other Lannisters left that are, you know, like Tywin's brother? I forget that dude's name. Isn't he gone now?
Kevin.
Kevin. Is it? I love it.
Your favorite
of all the wonderful, amazing, fantastical fantasy names that George R. R. Martin came up with, and he's like, and this one, fuck it, he's called Kevin. I don't know. It's like, it's just so amazing. But like,
it's with an A instead of an I. But still,
I know. But it's still just, it's still bizarre. But like, I have this. I really wonder, like, I don't see Jaime dying at the same time as Cersei. He's going to have some kind of redemption arc, I would hope. So like, and Tyrion, I want to see a moment between Tyrion and Jaime after they've won, after Tyrion and Daenerys have won. What does Tyrion do as, like, you know, in the position of power? You know, Cersei obviously is not going to make it. I just don't see that happening. But Jaime, I think, could, and going back to the plan, the whole reason I wrote that question, Tyrion knows that if he just, you know, slices Jaime's head off, it's going to be really hard to keep Casterly Rock kind of in check. Like, you know, they're not going to really support Tyrion as like as the Lord of Casterly Rocks, but keeping Jaime in place might stabilize that, you know, because Tyrion's thinking about those things. So it's just worth pondering as we move towards the end game. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't see Jaime living if Cersei's dead. Like, it's not like that. I don't think he will want to live if she's gone. But my only thing about this is you can tell in their recent interactions in the last 2 episodes, he's really questioning her a lot and really questioning why she's doing this and questioning her sanity. And like, you know, maybe by the end of this, he's kind of come, you know, that she's not the woman he loved. You know, she's not the sister lover or whatever that he once knew. And that, maybe he would, for the good of things, you know, for the love of his brother, for the love of his house, allow himself to be swayed in that way.
He was a king killer once upon a time. He could be again.
Yeah. Kingslayer. That is
Kingslayer.
Emily, not to divert us during the lightning round, which I'm not doing a good job of shepherding, but okay. So refresh my memory. In the books, I believe it is like a huge detail that when Cersei is captured by the Faith Militant, when she's in prison,
Sparrows or whatever,
that there's a big deal about, you know, because her crime is, I guess, infidelity, but also it's kind of incestuous because it's with another Lannister,
cousin.
Her cousin. And isn't there something about how Jaime, if he were to discover that, or maybe he does discover that, and he's really horrified again that she would sort of cheat on him? I don't know if he's discovered this in the show. I guess that's where my question is.
Yeah, I think he does, actually. When he comes back and she talks about Lancel Lannister, I think he is kind of pissed. Like, dude, you couldn't wait for me for 3 months or whatever. Like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do this? Like, he's our uncle's, because he was very young. It was like in the book.
He's Kevin's kid.
Young. He's Kevin's kid. I have an Uncle Kevin too, so it's really funny. I think he does know. And so, but I think again, yeah, it's sort of like, you know, she's like, oh, I just did it for whatever, you know, I missed you, blah, blah. But that Jamie's kind of like, I've never, ever, ever been with anyone else but you.
Right,
ever.
right.
And so that it was like a really betrayal for him.
Exactly.
She would, you know, not just that he got the thing, you know, she got married, whatever she had to, but then she chose to engage with Lancel Lannister. And that was like the betrayal for him.
Yeah. And it's such a, you know, on top of everything else, like her acting mad now, it's very, I don't know. He's got a lot of reason not to be on her side. It would be really great if he just defected. So then we get we get Cersei's own Q, Qyburn, who that Taylor's pun.
I like it.
It's like he has this big plan. There's this thing of like when they're in the sort of council meeting, or at least when she's talking to her bannermen about the threats to the realm. And Qyburn is the one who says like, "Oh, we're working on something to get the dragons.
Have a solution for
right."
That.
I expected something magical, and instead we get a huge crossbow.
Yeah, like it's not anything revolutionary. In the real world, it's called a scorpion. I learned. And
not a ballista.
No, it is also called a ballista, but it originally also called a scorpion. And then there was one, the Romans called it some really like wiggle fish or something. It was super weird. I don't know. It was something like toggle fish. And I was like, cool, okay, that's weird, but cool.
Here's my question though. Why is this suddenly like a technological breakthrough? Why in all the years that they've had dragons in the past, just regular siege weapons, why is this like suddenly like Qyburn's like iPhone? It's like, look at it, look what we've done. I'm just like, I was so shocked. I was shocked by that, and more shocked that it wasn't some kind of crazy, like he didn't have some kind of zombie dragon in the lair or something.
Like, how did they not have like 20 of them already on the turrets of King's Landing?
Exactly.
Like as soon as you figure out like how to shoot a bolt that big through the skull of a dragon, put that in production, man. He says something like, all of our blacksmiths have been working day and night on this, and it's like 20 feet long. Like, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of lame. It's kind of like, I would have much rather, and I know they haven't talked about it in the show yet, and they probably won't, hopefully, just because it's too much too late. But I was kind of hoping the whole like Horn of the Dragon that Euron has in the books is something that Qyburn got his hands on. He's like, you know, we found this artifact, and it is said to control the dragon. Like something more sinister than like, hey, here's this regular siege weapon. I don't know.
Honestly, now that you say that, I'm thankful that it's just a giant crossbow, because if Euron returned and was like, I brought you this gift, but also this magical horn that we've never talked about before.
That's what I thought he was going to go do.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I thought he meant. And now it's just like, no, I'm just going to kidnap some women. BRB. Like, oh, okay, great. Cool. Great.
Yeah.
I'll tell you before we go to Old Town that, I gave a seat up to Qyburn at a bar at Comic-Con on Saturday. And it was very
really?
What?
Yeah. I mean, not the actor, but
the
nice? Cosplayer.
Okay.
He was extremely gracious.
What? Oh, okay, good. He didn't curse you or like try to turn you into a zombie afterwards.
No, he was like really thankful that we flagged him down. Like, hey, just take our seats. Don't keep wandering the bar, reanimating giant dead people.
Please, for the love of God.
Yeah, knock it off, dick.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we saved Old Town for second to last, because that was too gross to spend much time on.
I couldn't look. I had to look away. As soon as I realized what he was going to do, I was like, nope, I'm good.
And fuck those
I don't want to throw up.
For cutting to that damn pot pie right after.
Peter was like, that's the best cutaway ever. And I was like, no, it's not. Shut up. It's
well, there was last week with the poop and the soup. The poop soup. And this week with this problem,
so
like,
gross.
Oh yeah, it's awful.
Gross.
It was horrible. Here's a real quick aside though, and this is something I read in the comments section. The only reason that some people are thinking Jorah is still around, because at this point, what does he have to contribute? other than the fact that maybe it's him who's the prince that is promised. And it's now, bear with me. Somebody went through a lot of hoop jumping to make this sort of logical case that of all the sort of check marks for the prince that was promised, so all the the Azor Ahai checklist, if you could make a case that Bora has a sort of loose semblance of a check mark on each of those, and otherwise, why is he still here? Like, what's the point of him in the show other than to be like a last minute princess promise? I don't buy it. I'm just throwing it out there as a maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know why he's still here. I don't know.
It's such a shame because there's characters, again, I said this last week, there's characters like the Sand Snakes that if they would develop would be really interesting. Even Euron would be interesting if they developed any backstory with him. But instead, these people are just sort of robots that are either dying or killing off other people. And then there's these characters like Jorah that are just persisting like forever. Yeah. Like, dude, we don't care.
Yeah, I don't need to see him do some like final like soliloquy to Dany about his unrequitant love for her as he's dying for. Like, I don't need that. We've had that 4 times now. Like, what else is he there for? One other thing I'd mention in the notes that I want to throw out there real quick. I love, and there has been this other sort of theory that Sam is kind of the Mary Sue for George R.R. Martin, like the character stand-in for George R.R. Martin, both physically, but also just sort of how he's kind of, the Maester exposition. And I don't think anything that was proven to me beyond all doubt when Maester Broadbent was talking about like his book. And he's like, I'm calling it the history of Robert's war with the others looking on. Like, he just had this long, elaborate title. And Sam's like, I was thinking it'd be something more poetic. And I was so thinking he'd be like, I don't know, a Song of Ice and Fire, maybe. Like, I'm convinced that this show is going to end with Sam pulling a Frodo or Bilbo Baggins and like writing in this book.
Let me write all this down. Yeah.
And it's going to be either called the Game of Thrones or so. I mark my words. This is coming.
Yeah. I will say too, though,
that will be that.
Whatever the Archmaester's name is, I don't remember I just know Archmaester. But the fact that he was from Harry Potter, he was Forrest Slughorn in Harry Potter, and that Sam has to ask him about getting into the restricted section just delights me to no end. Like, I was sitting here going, the restricted section.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's my favorite part. Great. And I wonder if they did it on purpose. I don't think they did, but I kind of hope that they did. Because
I hope they did. Why, Mr. Would you want to know about the restricted section?
Let's wrap up with Arya scenes. First of all, she is reunited with Hot Pie, whom I really, again, another character that could just be on a boat for all we care. With Gendry, like those two could just be off swimming together, rescuing Theon for all we know.
Yes, but no, because we left him in the hotel. Like, what else is he going to do but stay in that little inn and get better at doing the inn? Like, honestly, that's the first time.
It's totally appropriate for him to come back.
Yeah, exactly. It's the first time a character has ever made sense like that.
Don't you think she went back there because she knew he would be there? That's kind of what I was wondering. Yeah.
I think so. And it's just kind of nice to like see someone be normal and like happy.
Yeah. Again. Yeah.
Like, it's kind of nice. And like his food looks friggin' delicious. Like the bread she was eating, I was like, please put that in my face. Oh my God. Also her line with him she was like, you got to brown the butter before you put the pies in. And she goes, I didn't do that. He goes, have you been making pies? She's 1 or 2. I laughed so hard. Where she was just so casual about like, yeah, I killed some people, chopped them up, made them the pies, fed them to someone, then killed him. Just so casual about it.
Yeah. And it was also, their conversation was another economical sort of info dump where she learns about Winterfell, from this really casual conversation, which I really liked. Yeah. So then there's another scene where she is sitting alone in the woods and her horse gets a little twitchy and all these wolves show up and we get to meet this giant effing direwolf, Arya's direwolf, Nymeria.
The best.
And I was almost shouting, just warg, warg into her.
No. It was more likely that Bran had worked into Nymeria, but I'm hoping that's also not the case. This needs to be just a pure moment. I didn't watch the after show sort of summary, but my takeaway was that it was just a great moment to sort of to just kind of contextualize Arya's journey. You know, she's not the girl that left Winterfell with her wolf. She's a different person now. Nymeria is a different wolf. I think there's still a high chance that they're going to reunite to kill some people or mow down some White Walkers at some point. But I liked that, you know, when she says it's not you, or that's not you. It was almost like she was saying that about herself too.
Yeah. Well, it's actually a direct callback from season 1 when Ned is telling Arya they're going to King's Landing, and he's like explaining to her, like, look, why don't you want to go? Like, you can wear beautiful dresses and meet a handsome lord and get married and be the lady of the castle. And then she's like all pouty, and then he just kind of like sits back and shuts this little book that he was reading to her, and he just goes, you're right, that's not you. You know, like you're not that. You're not ever going to have that life. And someone, I think it was Joanna actually, in Joanna's Vanity Fair article, that she points out that Arya is realizing, like, that unlike maybe Summer or Ghost, like, Nymeria is wild now, and she doesn't want to be a companion to a human. Like, she's got her own thing and her own pack. Also, did you notice that her pack was all gray wolves and one black wolf?
I did not.
Yeah.
Good call.
Much like the opposite of their litter of these white, you know, these gray whatever wolves, and then the one pure white one of Ghosts. So I thought that was really cool too. But yeah, I mean, and I cried because it was such a good start to her homecoming of, like, all these pieces are finally coming back together for Arya. Like, these things that she has lost are finally coming back to her. And the fact that she was mature enough and strong enough to realize, like, no, I'm going to let you go now. I'm going to let you go yourself because I let you go, you know, not yourself the first time. Like that she didn't want to go the first time.
Yeah, that was well said. And all of that is very good. And there's in the after show, the showrunners make a point of saying, you know, this moment wasn't really going to land unless the actor, you know, pulled it off. And when I, you know, both times that I watched it, there's just Maisie Williams, like, I just, you know, when she has that encounter with Nymeria, it's like, oh my God, it's just perfect.
Yeah.
That girl knows what she's doing.
That girl, good.
Yeah. And so preview of next week. I don't remember all the scenes because they're just like a mashup of crap that like it's a blur that happens when I watch the preview. So fill in anything I leave out. But we see Cersei announcing that she has drawn first blood in the war, and we see Euron sort of triumphantly returning to King's Landing. Although I don't understand who in King's Landing gives a shit. Like, like people wise, like sure the politicians and soldiers care, but like, you know. And then we see Jon entering the throne room with Daenerys on the throne at Dragonstone. So anything I missed, I mean, we can hypothesize from there if we want to speculate.
I don't remember.
That's basically it. I'm a little, this will be episode 3 of what? Of 6 or 7? I forget how many they're doing.
7, I think.
Of 7.
I want to say it's 7.
They're still moving a little too slow for my taste. You know, and I'm pretty much convinced now that the last episode is going to be the wall falling, or like, you know, the true White Walker attack will be in play. But it's just like the fact that Euron's being celebrated like Justin Bieber as he, you know, runs through the town. Like, I just don't understand. Remember this day will be Euron Greyjoy Day, and he has a key to the city.
Yeah. What if next week is just Euron Day? It's just an hour celebration of like all the people writing songs about him. No, I can't believe I didn't bring this up earlier because I tweeted about it on the Find Us There account. So some eagle-eyed conspiracy theorists have put this together. In episode 1, we saw the Hound saying that he was watching the army of the dead march around the castle. And in this week's map, Taylor, the water on the sides of the wall was frozen over.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, I saw that too.
So the dead can just walk around Eastwatch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh
I'm
shit.
looking forward to that. That's my moment of that will give me hope if we can get to that. If we can get to the White Walkers, being routed, my hope is that they try that, they're routed, and they have to bring the wall down. That'd be great. I want to see that goddamn wall fall down.
Horn. We want the horn.
I want to see the wall fall down, and I want to see a broken wall in the opening credits for next season. That's what it would make so much sense.
Emily, where can people find you if they want to talk to you about literature and Game of Thrones?
You can yell at me, as Todd likes to say. You can yell at me on Twitter and Instagram at that Emily Kelly. You can also find me here on the Their Network and the Fan Theories podcast. This month's podcast comes out next Monday. And it's all about Harry Potter, my favoriteest of fandoms. So I will cry a lot. It will probably be very lengthy, but it's going to be really great. So join us for that. And you can find that on iTunes and SoundCloud and Google Play and Stitcher and on our website. Find us there. Awesome.
Emily just plugged everything I was going to pitch to Taylor to plug. Taylor, you got anything else? Find us at findusthere.org.
Findusthere.org. And I'm also anxious for this Harry Potter fan theory, so I'll be tuning in.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
That'll be incredible. 7 blessings to you both.
And Azor Ahai to you, Todd. Azor Ahai to you all.